Hey, what's up everybody, it's me Jordan, and I'm back with another drawing video. This time I'm drawing the highly requested and major badass Levi Ackerman from Attack on Titan, and I had a lot of fun with this one. I think it turned out really nice, and I think it's one of my better Copic art drawings. So hopefully you guys enjoy it, and let's get on with it. I'm starting out by colouring the skin, and I'm always trying out new combinations for skin colours. So whenever people ask me what colours are the best skin colours, I don't really know what to say because I don't think there is such a thing. There's just so many different combinations and really good options that it's impossible just to single it down to a couple best colours. So my advice to people is just to try different combinations, try out different colours, and just see what works for you, because it all comes down to personal preference. And you've got to remember that I also go in and do a lot of the colouring with my Prismacolours, so I add a lot more tone to it as well. Now I'm going in and colouring the blood, and I'm just doing the base coat, so it looks really bad at the moment, I guess, and it looks a bit weird. So it's just something you trust yourself and you kind of build it up. I got a lot of compliments on how the blood looked, and my advice for colouring blood is that it's often more of a brown than you think. Sometimes people do blood really kind of fluorescent red, and it just looks kind of cartoony and fake. It depends what look you want to get, so I'm not saying there's a right and wrong way, but to get it looking how I did, I just built it up really slowly. I used some really dull and kind of muted reds. One of the colours is called light mahogany, and that works really well. I was also using my cherry white marker to kind of help with the blending.
No one cares anymore.
And give it a bit more texture. I was really pushing the colour around. It's kind of hard to explain, but if you saw what I was doing, I would go in with my darker reds and then switch back to my cherry white and blend it in a little bit and then go back to the darker reds. And I was kind of just alternating between the two, and this helps you kind of layer it and build it up. It's a kind of slow process, but I think it has a really nice result and it gives it a really nice textured look. I also did a lot of work with my Prismacolours over that at the end. So it's not finished here, the blood still needs some extra layers and stuff, but it's kind of enough for now. And I'm going to add highlights and stuff later, so that's going to make a big difference as well. Now I'm going in with my black pencil, and I just wanted to add some more shadows to it. I wanted this drawing to have a really dark kind of look, because I wanted extreme shading in it. Just darkening it up with the black pencil makes a big difference. And I'm also going in with a couple of different colours, like a little bit of blue shadows as well, and a little bit of purple I think, and that gives it kind of a more interesting look. Now I'm adding a bit more red with my Prismacolours to the blood to kind of even it out a little bit, darken some bits up, and again add more texture to it. I want to quickly mention that I did use reference for this, but I made sure to mix it up a bit and add my own style to it. More blood, more shading, more highlights, and just make it look unique. So now I'm going in and adding a little bit of soft pastel shavings to give some nice smooth blending, which contrasts really nice with the textured look from the Prismacolours. Now I'm going to go ahead and colour his hair, and I'm using a pretty interesting technique here, which basically revolves around doing lots of layers. So I'm starting out with the colours that I want to be as highlights, almost. So I want some yellows and some kind of browny colours to show through his hair as highlights. Now Levi's got really dark hair, but this makes it look a lot more interesting by adding some colour into that. Now my reasoning behind adding the yellows and browns as the highlights for his hair was that I kind of imagined there to be like burning and destroyed buildings in the background, like a war zone. So I wanted the hair to look like it was reflecting the light from the flames. So that's why I went with those colours for the highlights. So now I'm going in with the darker colours and layering that on top, and slowly blending it into the highlights so it all matches and flows nicely. I thought this was a really cool technique, which I honestly haven't really used that much before, so I was a little bit nervous to see if it was actually going to work, but I knew if it didn't work I could have just gone back in with the dark colours and covered up the highlights if it looked stupid. But I think it worked well and it's got a really interesting look, so I'll definitely be using this technique more in the future and try experimenting with different colours and see what effects I can get. Something to keep in mind when colouring hair is to make sure you're doing the right brush strokes. What I mean by that is you want the stroke of the brush to be flowing with where the hair would be going, so it creates the look of hair strands. I know that sounds really obvious, but some people forget to do it, and it makes a big difference. You generally don't want the hair looking like it's just one solid block colour. That being said, there's always different styles, so if you want to try something else out, go for it. I'm just adding some finishing touches to the hair, going in with a really dark Copic and just putting more contrast in there, and the hair's pretty much done. Now I'm colouring his white shirt, and honestly I struggled a little bit with this, mainly because I was finding that it was looking too washed out in comparison to his dark hair and all the blood that was happening. His shirt was just looking too kind of bland and non-existent, so I kind of went back in later and darkened it up. Added a bit of grime to it, a bit of dirt, and just darkened it up, and it worked a lot better. So at the moment I'm just building the shirt up with some neutral greys, a little bit of kind of beigey colours, and then adding some light purples and a tinge of blue. I'm all about using unusual and subtle colours in the shading. Individually you might not be able to notice the colours so much, but by the end of the drawing it all comes together really nicely and it just gives it a really interesting look. And it's going to help set your drawing apart from a lot of the other fan arts. You can see I've gone in and added some really pale yellow highlights that kind of match his hair, again going with the whole theme of the flames in the background. Now I'm adding the blood to his shirt, and at the start it just looks like he's had a terrible accident eating his hot dog. But as you build it up, it all comes together and it darkens up and actually looks more like blood than just tomato sauce. I find it really fun colouring the blood, because normally when you're colouring with Copics, you're trying to get a really smooth blend and you just want it basically looking as smooth as you can. But when I colour blood, at least with my technique, I don't care about that. It's all about getting a really gritty, textured look. So you're just pushing around the ink from the Copics a lot, making layers, and not worrying about it being smooth or anything like that. So it's a really fun process to do. You've just got to have a bit of faith in yourself, because at first, if you haven't really done this before, you'll feel like you're about to ruin your whole drawing. But it turns out really cool in my opinion. You'll see now I'm adding a few extra little details of kind of blood splatter effects, and I think this kind of just defines the blood a little bit more, puts a little bit more detail in, and gives more flow to it, so it actually looks like the blood's come from somewhere. It hasn't just appeared on his shirt. There's actually a splatter to it, and it makes it look a lot more interesting. At this stage, I'm still not happy with how the shirt's looking. The colours are too light, and it's just become overpowered by all the blood. So I've gone back and darkened it up. I've added the mud splatters, and just a lot more grime to it, and that's really helped out. I didn't record the whole process, but I also went in with my Prismacolours and darkened his shirt up even more. I'm a lot happier with how his shirt's looking, so I'm going to move on to his eyes. And I wanted them to have a really piercing look, because that's kind of how they are in the anime. Also, another tip that I have with eyes is to actually add some grey shading to the actual eyeball. A lot of people seem to leave the eyes just completely white, and it makes them look flat, where in reality the eye is actually rounded, obviously. So if you add some light grey shading to them, you can give them more of a rounded 3D effect, and they'll look a lot better and more realistic. It depends what style you want. Sometimes when you're doing the big anime eyes, you don't really want to do that as much, because then it'll just look kind of weird, bug-eyed. But for this, he's got the smaller eyes, and I actually went pretty extreme with it. I wanted them looking really dark, because that's kind of how it looks in the anime. He's got like the really dark eyes. It almost looks like he's got like eyeshadow on or something. Now I'm doing a little bit of shading with some soft pastel shavings. I used some dark blues and finished it off with some black. If you've watched a bunch of my other videos, you'll know I pretty much use this technique in all of my drawings. I just blend the soft pastels with a tissue, and it just finishes off the drawing really well. Now I'm going in and doing a simple background. I wanted it to look like there was sparks kind of flying, so I've got circles and then some little kind of swishy bits, and I made sure to use the same colours that I used for the highlights, so it kind of ties it all in together nicely. I like to keep the backgrounds nice and simple for these drawings, so all the focus stays on the character. If you want to do a complicated background, that's something you really should plan out at the start of the drawing, so have that all sketched in, because if you leave it to the end and then you try and do something complicated, often it just doesn't quite work as well as it could have if it was planned from the start, and then it can kind of take away from the character. That being said, it's all up to you what you want to do, but that's kind of my reasoning behind keeping it simple and just having a nice quick background which still kind of complements the drawing well but doesn't take away from it. Now I'm doing some work with my white gel pen, just adding in the highlights. I tried not to go too crazy with this one because I still wanted the drawing to look really dark and grimy, but adding the highlights gives a nice shine to the hair and also the blood. I'm just finishing up with the final touches. This drawing's pretty much done. I want to thank you guys who have watched this far. It's been a really long video, so I appreciate the people who watch it all the way through. Hopefully you enjoyed it anyway, and maybe even learnt something from it. I've got heaps more drawing videos on the way, some more inking videos, and I'll probably do a tour of my workspace as well. I'm kind of in the middle of cleaning up my desk and just clearing all the stuff out because it's just a real mess at the moment, so I'm kind of trying to do that over the next couple of days. And I'm going to do a recap of some of my old artworks as well from 2015. So lots of stuff is coming. Thanks for all the support, guys. You can check me out on Instagram if you want to see progress shots and better quality photos of my artwork. If you enjoyed this video, let me know by giving it a thumbs up. If enough people like it, maybe I'll draw Levi shirtless for all you Levi fangirls. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you guys next week in next week's drawing video.